Hi, Panos.
Hi, my name is Panos. This is Pam. We're going to do a series of introduction, demonstration, and commentary on various stages of experience that is pretty much every day, but perhaps goes unnoticed. And so there's a South African scientist called Mark Soms. He works at UCT. Very recently, he demonstrated that if you look at a brain, if this is a brain and this is half a brain, the limbic system, the brainstem, and the higher brain functions up here, he demonstrated that if you remove all of this, if you have a skull that's empty, basically, okay, which is kind of weird to think about, the consciousness actually resides in the brainstem. So if you're into that kind of stuff, please look him up, Mark Soms, Solms, and you will be amazed what he has come up with. So I'm saying that as a sort of a starting point, which is probably where we're going to end up, to demonstrate that daily events define who we are, and most people don't bother to examine them. So we're going to start off with a very simple exercise, okay, to show how my identity, in this case Pam, the subject, will experience who she thinks she is based on eyes open or eyes closed, okay? And so the demonstration will go along the following lines. So you look at your hand, you put your hand in front of you, you look at it and say, okay, this is my hand and this is space next to it. I can see there's a boundary, okay? And then I'm going to ask Pam to put her hand out and then you'll see what happens. So, okay, so having said that, if you just stick your whatever hand you like, left or right, and then just let it hang loose, completely relaxed, okay? And then close your eyes for a moment. And then as you close your eyes, see if you can identify where your hand ends and where space begins.
After a while, it disappears.
Yeah. There may be little highlights, perhaps a tingle here and there. So now, if you ask yourself, okay, with my eyes closed, when I'm actively, mentally, or through my attention trying to find this boundary, well, it kind of fades away, it disappears. So just continue, go back there, eyes closed again, let's try that. So if you now scan your body, what do you find? Can you find the boundary between your body and space?
It's not as easy as when it was just the hand.
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult because it moves from different parts of the body.
Exactly. So now, if mental activity is silenced, and this silencing is a byproduct, it is achieved by giving the instruction, find the boundary between your hand and space. So you're actively trying to find the boundary, right? So having given the mind an instruction, it starts to look for the answer. And immediately in that moment, it becomes silent. And so there's a couple of benefits here, right? The first benefit is, if you want your mind to be silent, don't just sit there and wait for it to be silent, because then thoughts will come and things will happen. But if you give it a task, go and find the boundary between my hand and space. Now the attention is looking, where the hell's the boundary? There's no boundary. What's going on? In the process of looking, in inverted commas looking, right? There's mental silence because the attention is busy looking for something. So that's one little secret or trick to get a state of attention and silence. Now, again, I think, let me just demonstrate another little trick, okay? If I'm going to move my eyes from left to right, you can just see the quality of the movement. is it smooth or is it not smooth? Okay, I'll try and make it as smooth as I can. So I'm looking on the left and I'm moving my eyes to the right. Left and right. And one more time, left and right. Generally, they jump. I can't see them because I'm busy looking. Now watch what happens if I track. Okay, if I track my thumb, yeah, I'm looking to the left. I'm tracking now. I'm not moving my eyes. I'm looking at my thumb. Okay, as you can see, the movement is perfectly smooth. There's no jumping. This is a kind of an example to illustrate, hang on a minute. The way that the eye muscles have been designed, let's call it designed or evolved or whichever way, is for tracking. If you're scanning, they jump. If you're tracking, they move smoothly. So this is an observation.
Yeah.
It's true for everybody. In a similar way, if you keep quiet, say, okay, I'm going to, I'm just going to sit here and do nothing, your mind will start churning. But if you give your mind a task, now in very traditional societies, this instruction was given. See if you can find the boundary between the in-breath and the out-breath. We did it with something more tangible. Look at your hand, okay, you see it, there's the boundary. Close your eyes, now where's the boundary? Gone. But in the looking, there's a kind of a thing. If you now go to the next, try this yourself, keep your eyes closed, watch your breathing coming in. As you exhale, follow the exhalation and see if you can pinpoint the moment where the inhalation begins. Okay. Again, you'll find the quality of your attention tends to become more focused.
Yeah, it's a lot more.
Yeah, because you've given your mind a task. You don't just say, okay, I'm just going to be quiet. And the mind says, what does that mean? And starts jumping. Go here, go there, think, whatever. But if you give it a job to do, like find exactly the boundary between breaths. In fact, if one can imagine such a boundary, in that moment, there's complete mental silence because of the physiology. But we'll put that aside. So the conclusion of this could be, anyone can make their own conclusion, but one possible conclusion is that, okay, my self-image is primarily determined by visual information. If I say, who am I show a picture of myself. This is me. If I have a website or if I have a whatever WhatsApp account or whatever it is, who am I put a picture. So whether we like it or not, it's like by an unconscious agreement, we've all agreed, I am this thing that looks like this. But as soon as the eyes are closed and the hand is used as a reference or the breathing is used as a reference, suddenly my experience of who I am, I'm talking for myself, please test this, becomes this expansive spaciousness. So the question then is, okay, that's interesting. What can I do with that? So if I were to say to you, okay, now you have a choice. You can either be Pam, hand looks like this, looks like a picture, or Pam, the experience. Can you comment on the difference, if any?
The one with the eyes closed is a lot calmer. It's more peaceful. Okay. It's very still.
Okay.
Whereas the one where you identify, your mind's just all over the place.
Yeah. Also, again, I don't know, I'm not sure who might be watching this, but let's assume someone is watching this, right? And they go and try it. And they're sitting there and they're trying to find the boundary of their hand, or later on the boundary of the in-breath and the out-breath. And they get to this place of silence. My own experience of that, it's extreme restfulness. it's such a feeling of, okay, there's a deep sense of restfulness. Now, if a person is in a state of inner turmoil, they have stuff bothering them, or perhaps they're not physically well, so their attention is disturbed, one has to be cautious in cases like that, because if a person allows their attention to go within themselves, whereas this within space, and we will explore this in a minute, is not comfortable, if they have worries in their mind, other things will happen. And we will cover this as we go along. So the first step we've taken is to say, okay, I have an identity, it's defined by what seems to be visual cues. Then we've changed that identity now to be defined by more kinesthetic, if you like, experience. And in that respect, it becomes a diffuse presence rather than a fixed identity in space. And one could also say at this point, you know, if you've seen any Buddhist paintings, you'll find the Buddha is not eyes open or eyes closed, it's always half open. And one could therefore keep this dual awareness. Here's my reality here, there's my reality spaciousness, aha. And we will come back to that later. So the first step, what we've covered so far is, if the identity is not fixated on visual cues, we have a different life experience. In fact, this may raise an interesting question. Somebody who's blind, what kind of experience are they having? But anyhow, that's for. So now we said, okay, if the mind is silent and you're looking for a boundary or a limit between breathing and in and out, there seems to be a kind of a darkness, although it isn't. If you actually look, you'll find there's little. It's not a uniform darkness. There's highlights. You know, you'll find fluctuations of the visual field. You're not entirely black and dark, but nevertheless, let's leave that for now. Let me ask you something else. Let's play this game, right? If I say to you, what do you know about cats? Whatever comes to mind, just narrate. Whatever comes. Cats. What do you know about cats?
They're furry.
Okay.
They skulk around.
Okay.
They like lying in the sun. They always look at you with these devious eyes.
Okay. Now,
they always come to me.
Okay. Now, for somebody watching this, I don't know if you noticed, just a few, like less than a minute ago, Pam's eyes went up. She looked somewhere and then she came back. So if I were to say to you, when you looked wherever you looked, what color was that cat that you probably saw?
It was black and white.
Black and white. And what is it doing?
I was walking around.
Okay. So there's a black and white cat walking around.
Yeah.
Now, the first observation is that that space of so-called darkness that we experienced just now, suddenly in that same, call it inner space, suddenly in that inner space, there's a black and white cat walking. Now, let me ask you an interesting question. Before I asked you, hey, listen, with your eyes moved and you looked somewhere to see something, who knows, were you aware that there was a cat walking around before I asked you to look for it?
Definitely not.
Okay, so this is a peculiar thing. Anybody who's watching this video will actually see you going like this. Your eyes look up, and then you come back and you continue talking. But it's outside of your awareness. Well, then I ask you the question, okay, hang on a minute. What about this? Oh, yeah, there's a black and white cat. Now that you ask me, there it is. So now this is an example of crossing the boundary between conscious and subconscious experience. This is conscious experience. We're talking. I see you, you see me, that's fine. Okay. While that cat was busy walking, subconsciously, it was giving you the required information for you to be able to tell us your opinion about cats. In other words, the video defined what a cat means to you, and you were just telling us the words to go with the picture. Is that a fair? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the interesting thing about that Let me ask you this. Well, you already answered it, but I'm going to ask it again. Did you decide consciously now there will be this black and white cat and it will be walking this direction to that direction with the speed, left foot forward, right foot, and so on? Or did it all just happen by itself?
It just all happened by
Okay.
itself.
So we could make a bit of fun of this and say, in what you think is your mind, there seems to be a cat with its own mind. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting thing. You know, very often people find themselves in a position where they want, supposing they're studying, right? And they want to focus on some text or whatever it is, and their mind wanders, oh, what am I doing on Sunday? Who am I talking to later? This is a very interesting example. We're doing it playfully, obviously, to illustrate that, you know, what I think of as my mind in that mental space, there can be a cat amongst many millions of other things, which seems to have its own mind.
Mm.
And so my suggestion here is that as much as when I look out, in my case, I'm looking out the window, I'm seeing the sky and all the rest of it. And I don't say this is my space. I'm saying this is the space in which I exist. When I close my eyes, I normally think, well, this is my mind. I'm suggesting perhaps it might be a much better plan to go, as much as there's physical space, there is mental space. And in that mental space, who knows what can appear and disappear with its own rules. So I'm reframing, I'm asking to consider, wait a minute, what I call my mind, well, then how does the cat do what it wants to do? Now, of course, one can say, you know, this is memory and this is just another memory playing, whichever way it goes. The fact is the cat is walking, okay?
Yeah.
And you're not involved in that. So even if you ascribe this experience to memory, it's still a fair statement to say it wasn't something that you, as a conscious agent, did. It happened, you became aware of it. That's the point.
Well, I've never really had that in memory for it to be a memory, for instance. It's just something that happened.
Okay. Well, that's even more interesting then. So again, let me ask you this. As you kind of realize, hang on a minute, perhaps I hadn't noticed this before, that there's this mental landscape in which earlier on, when my eyes were closed and I was looking for the boundary of the hand, seemed to be like a darkness. Suddenly, in that same space, pop, there's this cat, and it's busy walking. Wow. What is that? I mean, I don't know. What does that do for you when you realize, hey, hang on, in this space, cats can walk, amongst other things? What is your opinion of that? What do you make of that?
I think at first it was confusing to me in terms of trying to distinguish where that exists and where my mind as such exists, and trying to figure out how the two interact with each other.
Okay.
And that interaction.
Okay. So what is interesting here is that I said to you, what do you know about cats? I didn't suggest there's a black and white cat must be walking, nothing. I said cats, right? And you just went, and this and that and the other and the furry and the whatever you said. Very few people ever ponder and say, but hang on, where do these ideas come from? If you ask a different person, they'll give you a different story about the same thing, cats. Now, imagine two people talking about cats, right? And the one is imagining a black and white cat walking, I don't know, wherever it is. And the other one is imagining something else somewhere else. They're not talking about the same thing, but they're talking about cats. Each one in their own world, unaware of the actual experience they're having until someone says, by the way, what color is the cat in your mind? One says black and white. No, says the other one is ginger or something else, right? In that moment, oh, my goodness, one might suddenly become aware of the fact that your mental world and my mental world are quite different. And very seldom do we keep this in mind, whether it is at work. Let's say you give instructions to somebody, go and feed the cat, for example. And their imagination of what you've just said may be completely different from what you intended. And again, I'm not talking about cats. You might give them some practical, go and do a spreadsheet, or I don't know, do these calculations, and they imagine something else. That's number one. Number two, when people live together, there's often conflict. One says this, the other one interprets it differently. No, 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 no. Fun and games, right? So as much as we're playing games here to illustrate a point, it's really important to keep in mind that all this stuff, if one takes it a bit more seriously, has tremendous value and implications that certainly can be explored further. Okay, I'm going to pause here for this section of what we've covered, and then we will continue later with another description.